On the dark night of 8th August 1963, a Royal Mail train was traveling from Glasgow to London. Inside one of its carriages were bags filled with banknotes, worth nearly 67 million today, or around 800 crore. The train driver, Jack Mills, was speeding through the darkness when suddenly, at a crossing, a red signal light flashed. This was highly unusual, because at that time and place, the signal turning red made no sense at all. Still, Jack Mills immediately applied the brakes and stopped the train on a deserted stretch of track. For a few moments, there was complete silence. But hidden behind that silence was a master plan that was about to become one of the greatest robberies of the century. The Great Train Robbery, in which the train itself was stolen. Welcome once again to Limitless Mind Voice. Viewers, this may sound like the plot of a movie, but in real life, criminals carried out a suspense-filled plan and looted millions of pounds from a British government train without firing a single bullet. Everything had begun months earlier, when a group of well-known London criminals sat together to plan a new operation. Bruce Reynolds, the mastermind, along with a few trusted associates, began designing an extraordinary heist. He possessed secret information about the Royal Mail, Britain's national postal service. This information came from a senior Royal Mail security officer, whose identity was never revealed. The secret was this: on the Glasgow to London route, there was a special carriage known as the HVP High Value Packages Coach. On a particular day, an unusually large amount of cash would be transported, and that was the carriage they had to rob. Bruce Reynolds and his associates were experienced criminals, but they had no experience robbing trains. So they brought in another London-based gang that did have such experience. This infamous gang was known as the South Coast Raiders. Slowly the team grew, and eventually more than 15 people were involved. They were determined to rob a government train without firing a single shot. This was no ordinary robbery. Months of meticulous planning went into it. On 7th August 1963 at 6:50 p.m., the train departed from Glasgow Central Station for London. It was scheduled to arrive at Euston Station at 4 a.m. the next morning. The train had 12 carriages and 72 post office staff members on board who sorted mail during the journey. This train was designed specifically to transport parcels and post between cities. It did not stop at stations. Instead, local post office staff hung mail bags on elevated racks at platforms. As the train slowed slightly while passing through, onboard staff used nets to catch incoming bags and drop outgoing ones, allowing mail distribution without stopping. The HVP carriage was not initially attached to the train. It was safely parked at Nune Valley Railway Station. HVP stood for High Value Packages, as it mostly carried large amounts of cash, often sent via money orders. In 1960, 3 years before the robbery, the Post Office Investigation Branch had ordered alarm systems to be installed in HVP carriages. By 1961, 3 such carriages were fitted with alarms, and older ones without alarms were kept in reserve. But on the day of the robbery, all alarm-equipped HVP carriages were out of service. So a reserve carriage, M324M, with no security system at all, was used instead. This was a crucial tip provided by the Royal Mail Insider. When the train reached Nune Valley Station, the HVP carriage was attached second from the engine. This was the first tip. The second, even more important tip was this. Normally, an HVP carriage carried about 300,000. But because the previous week had been a bank holiday weekend, the amount on board that day was close to 3 million, 12 times more money, and no alarm system. This was no coincidence. The robbers had been planning for months for this exact day. As night fell, 58-year-old Jack Mills drove the train toward its destination. Meanwhile, the robbers were hiding in bushes near the tracks. At around 3:00 a.m. on 8th August 1963. One gang member tampered with the Sears crossing signal. He covered the green light with a glove and powered the red light using a battery. Then they waited. When the train reached the crossing and Jack Mills saw the red signal, he was shocked. Royal Mail trains were never stopped here. Still, he applied the brakes. Silence fell again. The assistant driver, the second man, got off the train to contact the signalman using the trackside telephone, only to discover the line had been cut, exactly as planned. As he turned back, robbers emerged from the bushes and overpowered him. Others climbed into the engine cabin. When Jack Mills resisted, one robber struck him on the head with an iron bar, knocking him unconscious. At the same time, other gang members uncoupled the engine and the first 2 carriages from the rest of the train. Their plan was to move the train itself. About 1 km away was Bredigo Bridge, where their truck was waiting. They had brought along a retired train driver to operate the engine, but he panicked, as he had never driven this type of locomotive. Left with no choice, they revived Jack Mills and forced him to drive the train to Bredigo Bridge. Once there, they stopped it. The remaining carriages and the staff inside had no idea what had happened. At the bridge, the robbers broke into the HVP carriage, assaulted the 5 staff members inside, tied them up face down, and began loading the cash. There were 128 bags filled with 1 notes, 5 notes, and 10 shilling notes, weighing nearly 2.5 tons in total. They had only 15 minutes. Forming a human chain, they loaded 120 bags into the truck, leaving 8 behind. The plan had worked perfectly, except for one fatal mistake. Before leaving, one robber warned the staff not to move for 30 minutes, threatening death otherwise. They escaped in an Austin Lodestar truck with 2 Land Rovers carrying the same fake license plate, BMG 757, to confuse witnesses. By 4:30 a.m., after a 45-minute drive, they reached their hideout near Oakley Village, about 43 km away, while listening to police communications via VHF radio. They celebrated, playing Monopoly with real banknotes, but the celebration was short-lived. They soon heard police were searching within a 50 km radius, a conclusion drawn from the 30-minute warning given to the staff. Panicking, they advanced their escape plans. On Thursday, they divided the loot, about 2.5 million. Each member received around 150,000, which would equal billions today. They wiped fingerprints and assigned 1 man to burn down the hideout. He took the money, but never set the fire. Police helicopters searched the Buckinghamshire area. A 10,000 reward was announced. A neighbor reported suspicious activity on the morning of 8th August. Police raided the hideout, a rented leather slate farmhouse. They found empty bags, mail, a hastily repainted truck, and most importantly, fingerprints on a Monopoly board. Those fingerprints matched criminal records at Scotland Yard. Within days, 14 of the 16 robbers were arrested. Only 2 escaped, the replacement train driver and the Royal Mail security officer who leaked the information. Both were never identified. The court declared it the robbery of the century and sentenced most gang members to 30 years in prison. Bredigo Bridge became known as Train Robbers Bridge. Jack Mills never recovered from his injuries, could not return to work, and died 7 years later due to trauma. We hope you enjoyed this Limitless Mind Voice video. Thank you for your love, likes, and comments. See you in the next amazing video.